Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be installing a 2-inch lift on this stock Toyota 4Runner. Now I do know that I already have another video on lifting a Toyota 4Runner, but I wanted to make another one specifically because this one is a stock Toyota 4Runner, and I wanted to make another video because this one's going to be more in line with what most of you guys are going to be encountering. On the other video, I had a custom upper control arm, and I also didn't change out the rear shocks. So I want to do this video so that way you guys have a complete reference to upgrading your Toyota suspension. So for the parts, guys, we got a 2-inch lift here. We went with OME 2906 springs and Bilstein 5100 shocks to pair with these springs. You want to make sure you guys pair these properly. For the front, we went with a pre-assembled strut assembly. This will make installation much easier and much faster and also safer. We went with a Tundra coil in the front. This will give us a 2-inch lift, and also a Tundra specific Bilstein 5100 as well. Now the nice thing about this pre-assembled strut assembly is the fact that they will give you a new top hat that will be compatible, as well as the spring isolator here. So all we need to do is take out the old strut assembly and just put the new one in, assuming they lined up everything properly, which it looks like they did. We did this ahead of time to save time, but you can easily buy a strut assembly pre-assembled so that way it's ready to go, which I definitely suggest. It's usually going to cost you about $125, but you have to think about the fact that you're going to be getting a new spring isolator as well as a new top hat. These are all the tools we're going to be using for the job. You can see here I got a standard metric set. I've got some Loctite for some of the bolts. It helps to have a 14-inch flex head to take off some of the top hat nuts. I have a 19 and a 17 half-inch socket here with a half-inch ratchet, as well as a 3/8-inch ratchet for the socket set. We may need some vice grips later to hold the rear shock so we can take off the nut on top. We'll see. We'll also need this 17-inch millimeter open-end wrench. I believe we're going to need this for the upper shock nut as well as some various other things. Obviously something to take off your wheels, and a torque wrench to torque everything back together. And then we'll also need this 5mm hex. This is for the Bilstein 5100 rear shock, so that way we can tighten that nut. And then I'm going to be taking some measurements on the lift just to make sure that we got the lift that we wanted. And then these are just optional tools over here to help speed things along, just a ratchet and an impact. And then also you may need some silicone paste to lube up the bushings so that way they don't make a lot of noise when you're going down the road. And then last but not least, you're going to need a jack with 2 jack stands so that way you can lift the rear end and as well as the front end. The front end you can probably do one side at a time, but we're going to do both. And you're going to need 2 jack stands anyways to do the rear. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, we're going to need one special tool that comes with your Toyota 4Runner. It's right under here in the seat. We're going to need that bottle jack right there. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let's jack up the vehicle and get it on jack stands. All right, so first thing we're going to do is take apart the tire. All right guys, we're up here at the upper shock tower here. We're going to take this apart with a 14mm and just hope that your studs aren't completely stripped, because that'll make this job much more difficult. All right guys, we're down here at the lower shock bolt. This one takes a 19mm, so we're just going to loosen that up. And then we'll use the impact to get it the rest of the way out. All right, so you'll notice here this shock bolt is under a lot of tension right now, so there's no way you're gonna be able to push this out. If you hammer it, you're just gonna destroy all the threads. So this is where that other tool comes in handy. All right guys, we got our bottle jack here, and this one looks like it's never been used. It looks brand new. Sorry, Michael. We're gonna need it for this job. What you're gonna do is lower it all the way, stick it up here. It looks like it barely fits. And just rest it on the castle nut here, so that way it doesn't come flying off in case it does come off. And then we're just gonna slowly jack it down on this fender here. We're only gonna do this until this bolt down here is loose. All right guys, this is pretty much all I needed. We're probably gonna need to go down more when we put the new strut assembly in, but we'll do that later. All right, you can see down here, I can hit it out with my hand, so it's loose enough. And make sure you hang on to the shock. And then we can just take the shock right out. There we go. So here's what the old shock looks like compared to the new one. And what you want to do is make sure everything aligns properly. Basically what you want to look for is right here, see how it lines up? And then down here, it lines up as well. And then the spring perch is supposed to be in line with this as well. So everything looks correct for this one. And this yellow on the Tundra coil is for the driver's side as well. It's a little bit longer than the other one. All right guys, so make sure this perch right here is pointing out to the vehicle. Get your nuts ready to hold it up there. All right, I got my 3 nuts up there, and you can see down here, it doesn't quite line up. So we're gonna have to jack down this jack some more until that guy lines up right there. All right, start jacking. All right guys, looks like we finally made it. Got about 2 inches, 2.5 inches up here of sleeve showing. You don't want to put the bolt in from the back before everything lines up. If it doesn't, there you go. You should get your screwdriver or something. Just come in from the back side and use a longer screwdriver. Just be careful not to hit your CV boot. All right, now we're gonna relieve tension off this jack. Should be able to just do it by hand here. Definitely want to check the clearance here. Looks like we got clearance. All right, we're gonna go ahead and just tighten up the top here. Should be 47 foot-pounds, I believe. Just gonna do it by hand. Definitely don't want to over tighten these top ones because you'll strip the stud. All right, on the bottom here, you're gonna put your washer back on. And here's where I'm gonna use Loctite because I think these nuts have a tendency to get loose over time. All right, we got a little bit of Loctite in there. Just gonna zip that on. All right, before you torque this, you wanna put a load on the suspension. So what you can do is either just put the tire back on and then crawl under here and torque it, or you can put your jack under here, lift the A-arm up until it comes off of that jack stand back there. All right, we just put the jack under, lift it up under the A-arm here, as you guys saw, and we're gonna torque this to 101 foot-pounds now. All right, that's pretty much it. All right, let's go ahead and remove the jack and put the wheel back on, and we'll be all done with this side. All right, you guys, got the tire all back on and we're all done on this side. One thing to keep in mind is the clearance between the spring here and the steering knuckle itself. It gets really close if you don't install the springs properly. I'm not gonna show you guys the passenger side because it's exactly the same. Just do everything exactly the same. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock that one out real quick and I'm gonna head to the rear. All right, you guys, I'm all done on this side and you can see it's exactly the same. The only thing I wanted to point out is check out how close that is to the coil. It doesn't actually touch. So I think we should be good. Right now, this suspension is all the way down at full droop, so most likely it's not gonna make contact. When you put the wheel back on, this will actually move up and I'll move away from that coil. All right, you guys, we're gonna start on the rear. You can see you can jack it up from the rear differential there and put your jack stands on each side. Just be a little careful on that side. The gas tank is over there. Make sure you leave your jack under there because you're not gonna be able to take off your tire otherwise, unless you jack it up a whole bunch. But we're gonna leave it under there so that way we can get the tires off, and then we'll drop it all the way and that'll drop the axles down. Let's get started. All right guys, first thing you're gonna do is take off the sway bar end link. This one takes a 12mm. Some of them take 13s. We're just gonna use the same tool we used earlier for the top shock here. It's a 12 and a 14, so it's gonna be a 12 on here. All right, just take note of how these went back together. Bushing is normally facing down, flat side faces top, and then this cup thing just goes on top. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side, and then this should drop off. All right, we're gonna remove the lower shock now, right here. It's a 17mm. still gonna need these washers, so make sure you don't lose them. Keep track of which way they went on and off. Then we're gonna have to pry this out. So we're just gonna stick our pry bar in here and just pry it out of there. There we go. Won't need these bushings anymore, so you can toss them. All right, before you guys take the other side off, make sure you support the axle. I mean, technically these lower arms and upper arms are holding it in, but you want to have something supporting it just in case. All right, this here is the driver's side or the other side, and you can see this one's actually leaking. So it's a good thing that we're replacing it. All right, if you guys are having trouble getting rid of this bushing, just get a pair of channel locks. Just grip it, twist it a little bit, and that should free it right up. So you can see here, this side that's concave goes up against here. Just so we have more room to work underneath, we're gonna take the spare out, and you can use the tool that comes with the vehicle. I just have this long 3/8 inch extension, and we're just gonna take the tire down. All right guys, we are down here. This is the driver's side. You can see there, that's the shock. And right on top of there, I have a deep socket 14mm with a stubby ratchet. And let me take it out and I'll show you guys. Here it is. It's just a deep socket 14 on a stubby. And I put that up there so I can wedge it up against the frame. And then we're gonna remove the shock by just twisting it. So you can see it's up there. Eventually when you turn that shock enough, it's gonna hit up against the frame. And then at that point, it'll start loosening. So let me show you guys on the other side. All right, so maybe you guys can see that in the wheel well up there. It's now wedged up against the frame. All right, so most likely you're not reusing these, so just take some pliers, squeeze really hard, and you're gonna wanna do lefty-loosey on this. And eventually it's gonna be soft enough where you can just do it by hand. All right, it's just about there. There it goes. Now, if you live in the salt belt and that doesn't work for some reason, most likely you're gonna have to see if you can break it off. And if it's rusted enough, it'll probably be really weak up here. And when it's up there, you can just fatigue it back and forth like this. And sometimes it'll just break right off right here, and then you can just take it off. That's what happened to my 4Runner when I did mine. So it's another option for you guys. All right, make sure you also take the bushing and the washers out. You won't need these, but you don't want them flopping around up there. All right, I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side. All right, now that the shock is out of the way, we're gonna go ahead and take this rear spring out. And it should be pretty loose already, so just step on the drum a little bit and you should be able to lift it out. Helps to have somebody around to help you if you can, but you shouldn't need to on this side. All right, we're gonna need this still, so don't toss it. All right, here's the old spring and the new spring side by side. You can see it is taller, but because of the coils down here, it's gonna give us our 2-inch lift. Now these are size specific, and on here there's this little sticker. So this one here says B. This one goes on the passenger side, or the side without the gas tank. And then this one here goes on the driver's side, or the side of the gas tank. This one's a little bit longer than this one. All right guys, we're gonna go ahead and just clean this perch a little bit. Probably not necessary, but we're gonna do it anyways. And then we're gonna put the spring isolator back on. This one doesn't really matter where it goes. And then we're gonna stick the spring in there. Make sure it lines up. And just make sure this lower part makes contact with this axle right here. Just make sure everything's good. We're gonna do the other side now. All right, this side should be similar. It's gonna be a little bit harder on this side because the track bar here doesn't want it to go down, but it should be able to. There we go. Make sure you hang on to this thing. All right, we're gonna clean up the perch here as well. Grab our new spring, throw on the isolator, and try to get it in there. Now I remember having issues with this last time and I had to put a tire on this side. Probably helps to have a buddy again. All right, if you guys don't have anybody handy, you could use that bottle jack that we used earlier, and you can lower it by putting it on the axle here and then putting it on this bump stop. All right, so this worked, and we're gonna twist this around, and then we're gonna center it, and we're gonna remove tension. All right, so you can see this little Toyota jack comes in handy. All right, we're good on this side, and now we're gonna start putting the shock back on. Now, one thing you wanna take note of is the order of the bushings here. So you'll see there's a cup that goes on the shock, just like this one here. It's metal. And then the bushing, you'll wanna face it up towards the top. Right here. And this one's actually the same on both sides, so you don't really need to do anything. And then this here is the centering washer. It comes with the Bilstein shocks, so you want to put that there. Then you're going to put this back in the vehicle, and then on top you're going to want to put another bushing, and then the washer like this, and then the nut, just like how it is here. So that's it, and you won't need anything from the old stuff, but you might want to keep it just in case. Alright guys, we got the shock here. As mentioned earlier, you only want these 3 pieces on here first. And then you're gonna put the other end on top. And I can't really show you guys that, but you're gonna stick this through the hole and then start the nut. And I'll show you guys how to tighten it after. And then before you go under there, make sure you lubricate your bushings. Just using this Mission Automotive silicone paste. This is the passenger side right now, and the only way to reach far enough up here is to crawl under here. So if you got a buddy, have him feed the shock to you, but I'm gonna do this by myself. It's also a good idea to clean the top. That way it's got a good mating surface for your bushings. All right, we got it started. All right guys, we're down here at the lower shock, and we're gonna wanna line this up. And of course, put the new bushings in. So you're gonna wanna lubricate the bushings so they don't make noise. And one side is beveled. You'll want the beveled side to go towards the shock here on the inner. So I'm gonna take this one out, leave this nut in here, or leave this washer in here. And then we're gonna use the jack to lift this back up. All right, we got the jack under there, and we're just gonna lift the axle up to line up the shock. Get your other bushing in there. And then your washer, and then just start that. We're gonna tighten this up a little bit, not gonna torque it yet. All right, we're gonna snug this up, and then we're gonna head to the other side and do the same thing. All right, it's all tightened up. We're gonna do the same thing to the other side. I'm gonna spare you guys that one because it's gonna be exactly the same thing. All right guys, it's a pretty tight fit down here, but what you need to do is just wedge up that 17mm open end. Up there, you can see, this is the passenger side. And then you're gonna use your 5mm ratchet here, and you're gonna set it to loosen, which will tighten that 17 up there as you ratchet this guy. So I'll see if I can show you guys. So you can't really see, but this is all you gotta do. So I'll just finish that up until it's snug. And there's no way you're gonna fit a torque wrench up there, so just do it until it's tight. All right guys, both the shocks are in, all the springs are in there. Now we're gonna jack up the lower differential here, and we're gonna make sure the springs line up when we go up. And then we're gonna put our sway bar end links back in, and then torque the lower shock bolt. All right, once you jacked it up enough, and you probably jacked it up enough to take the weight off the jack stands, because that's when you're gonna wanna torque the shock as well. So now that it's raised up enough, we're gonna put this through here, put the old bushing back on, and then tighten this nut here. All right, now that the weight of the vehicle is on the springs, we're gonna torque this down to 47 foot-pounds. And this is a 17mm. I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side. It's exactly the same, so I'm gonna spare you guys the time. All right, you guys, we've got everything tightened up. Just make sure you double check that top nut is tight, the lower shock is tight, and your sway bar end links are put in properly. Now we're just gonna jack it up, and then we're gonna put the wheels back on. All right, you're gonna wanna torque these to 83 foot-pounds in a star pattern, and then we're gonna finish it up and torque the other side as well. All right, you guys, we've got everything back together, and you can see this baby is lifted. quite a bit now. It's an extra 2 inches probably. I'm gonna go take it for a quick test drive just to make sure everything's okay, and I'll show you guys the driver's side as well. All right, we're back from the test drive and everything looks like it's good to go. Ride's much better now. It's not as bouncy, and before it was rolling a lot because the rear shocks weren't really helping. And I took a little measurement. We're about 1/2 inch higher back there than the front, which is perfect because those are new springs and they're probably gonna settle and it'll probably be perfectly level, or maybe slightly higher in the back. But I'll put some measurements for you guys from center to fender so you guys can kind of see the difference. I think we gained about 1.5 inches in front and maybe 1.5 inches in the back. All right, you guys, that about wraps up the video. I couldn't hang in the garage any longer. It's 102 degrees and I wanted to film the video for you guys anyways. And I'm still sweating after a cold shower. So as you guys saw, if you have a pre-assembled strut, it's gonna be a lot simpler on the front. So I highly suggest you guys pay the extra money for that. It only costs a little bit more money, but it's gonna save you a whole lot more time. Sometimes those top 3 nuts will actually rust and then spin the studs, making it impossible to remove, and you end up having to cut them anyways. And in that scenario, you have to go buy a new top hat anyways. So now that everything's done, we're gonna go ahead and drive it around a couple days to let those rear springs settle. Once they're all settled, then you can go and get in alignment. So make sure you guys get in alignment because we did mess with all the geometry and you wanna get it back into spec. That's a nice thing about these 2-inch lifts is that most likely they're gonna be able to get it in spec, at least close to spec, without having to buy a custom aftermarket upper control arm. And I have to admit, this 4Runner now looks pretty sharp with this 2-inch lift. Kind of makes me miss my 2-inch lift when I used to have on my 4Runner. So hopefully Michael's happy with it. Well guys, hopefully you found the video helpful. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button down below. It was really hot filming this and I almost didn't want to, but I wanted to do this for you guys just in case you're coming from a stock 4Runner and putting on a new lift. As always, I'll leave links to all the parts and tools that I use in the video down in the video description, so that way you guys can find it easier. And if you guys have any questions, just let me know down in the comments below. I usually get back to you guys within a couple days. And if you guys like content like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I got a lot of other videos on my channel, so go check those out. And as always guys, have a nice day and stay cool out there.